I gave you all I own, put you on this golden throne, but I'm a little stronger now.
Welcome to the C.S. Joseph podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, because I'm not Sam and I'm not Chris. And we are joined by the live studio audience known as John Bodine for this evening's broadcast or recording or whatever, because it's not like it is a broadcast because it's not live, which I may actually just decide to go live in a few minutes anyway because I have a hair up my ass. That being said, today's question: how does an ISTP woman care for an ENTP SI Inferior? I kind of feel like I've been asked this question before, but given that I am SI Inferior, and we all know, within the Ego Hacker community, how much C.S. Joseph just loves to talk about himself, like, constantly. So, and this is like, an ESTP male question, so why not? Or at least the question is about ESTP males, or men, or potentially me. I have no idea. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity here to spend the next few minutes talking about myself, because what person out there in their right mind does not enjoy talking about themselves? I mean, come on. This is like literally one of the pillar premises of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. All you have to do is just get people to talk about themselves, and then all of a sudden they'll tell you how much of a great conversationalist you are. So thank you, my dear audience of the Ego Hacker community, for being such a great conversationalist with me today on this particular episode. But how does an ISTP woman care for an ENTP SI Inferior? And I totally understand why this question is being asked. And by the way, I have the gain turned all the way down on this microphone, and I've been playing a lot with the sound. So new microphone again. Thank you all who are complaining about the other headset that I had and how horrible it was. I'm definitely trying to do better. I understand that as a podcaster and as a YouTuber, I usually just plain suck when it comes to the multimedia things. And if ever you want to give me advice, do not hesitate to do so, or criticism, as long as you provide a solution with your criticism. Email us at support@csjoseph.life. It will open a ticket, and it will help the support staff get that information to me so that I can suck less, as a content creator. Thanks. Anyway, so ISTP woman, ENTP man, this is an intrigue relationship. We've talked heavily about intrigue relationships in the past, and actually relating to ISTP and ENTPs together. And I think this particular question, these types of questions, ends up coming from the same Acolyte member, which I personally don't mind that because I don't think there is enough information out there on intrigue relationships. And whenever I have the opportunity to talk about them, I mean, it's great. But yeah, how does an ISTP woman care for an ENTP SI Inferior? I mean, there's a lot of ways, and there's a lot of pitfalls. But really, the main way, the main thing that an ISTP woman can actually offer SI Inferior is consideration. But another way of putting it in more acceptable or layman's terms, that would be thoughtfulness. Really just being thoughtful. And openly thoughtful, not like hidden thoughtful, that kind of a thing. But like, one of the challenges that I've had in having sexual relationships or even observed sexual relationships between NTPs and STPs is that thoughtfulness, and this is basically intrigue and kindred relationships, basically. Thoughtfulness ends up becoming a huge issue. Now, it's not as big of an issue in an intrigue relationship because at least one of the TI functions is optimistic, whereas the other one is pessimistic, which means that via cognitive orbit, the extroverted thinking function, one of those extroverted thinking functions will actually be optimistic. So at least there's that advantage in the intrigue relationship. It's not as bad as like when it is in a kindred relationship where they're exactly the same and you have so much pessimism and so much cynicism present within the relationship that it can actually cause a breakdown. And like for example, in the kindred, the breakdown is that hey, the STP ends up being very inconsiderate towards the ENTP, and SI Inferior does not have its needs met, whereas Expert Intuition Hero is definitely meeting the needs of the NI Inferior. Now, when it comes to the ENTP ISTP intrigue relationship, expert intuition hero is absolutely there for NI child. It's definitely meeting the needs and the wants and the desires of the NI child. So it's more about wants and desires because it's expert intuition hero. But expert sensing parent, because it is pessimistic in that regard, it ends up, providing a decent experience for the Si Inferior, which, whereas the expert sensing hero, like if we're going to look at a kindred relationship, would have some difficulty doing that because expert intuition hero can get pretty lazy and pretty prideful on its own and likes to rest on its laurels because of introverted sensing nemesis getting in the way. And then thus the Si Inferior is not able to have its needs met. So an extroverted sensing parent is technically better. That being said, though, is that the child function, the NI child function of the ISTP woman is definitely getting what it wants out of the relationship. However, the extroverted feeling child on part of the ENTP man is not getting what it's looking for out of the relationship. And it's like all of a sudden the extroverted feeling child is supposed to be happy with what? An introverted feeling demon. And that's really something that's going to be super long term for the ENTP to handle, especially emotionally. Not really. It's going to end up causing a lot of problems. However, there's one thing that the ISTP woman can do on a regular basis to actually prevent this problem, and that is healthy, proper use of extroverted thinking nemesis. Now, oftentimes, I've had extroverted thinking nemesis just be really combative with me personally and question my intelligence, question my thinking constantly, instead of actually doing what it's supposed to be doing, be useful, and doing plenty of research on its own for my personal benefit as a man. So when extroverted thinking nemesis, for some reason, I don't understand why ISTP women just have this thing where they're not actually willing to sit down at a computer and prevent their introverted thinking from either becoming an echo chamber or from becoming outdated. Echo chamber introverted thinking is a form of TI ignorance, as we've discussed before, where the TI user is making decisions based on preferred input, what it wants to hear, that's the echo chamber, versus the other side of introverted thinking ignorance, which is when the TI user starts making decisions based on outdated or old information. And since ISTPs are extroverted sensing, they live in the moment, their introverted sensing critic often ends up creating an environment internally within their minds that lead to, they often end up making decisions based on old information. So it's more likely an ISTP woman, if she's being ignorant with her introverted thinking, she will be making decisions based on old information, which can be really, really frustrating. That's not to say that a TI parent in ENTP doesn't do that. However, given that introverted thinking hero and extrovert intuition nemesis, both of those two functions on a cognitive orbit with each other, they're both optimistic. And because of that optimism, they assume that they actually already know things, which actually inhibits their ability to be truly thoughtful. So if I'm in a sexual relationship with an ISTP woman and she's not doing enough research, she's not gathering up enough input for herself, because honestly, in the relationship, she has the responsibility of being the resident extroverted thinker for the both of us, because her extroverted thinking is higher than mine and it's optimistic, right? Therefore, she would have the responsibility of being the extroverted thinker in the relationship. But if she's not spending regular time researching, her ability to be thoughtful towards me and thoughtful towards my introverted sensing inferior is just going to stop. It's gonna be a shit show. Seriously, it's gonna be a ridiculous, horrible relationship. And this is one of the reasons why ISTPs, especially ISTP women, struggle with pride, because they are making decisions, making the assumption that they already know what is needed for them to know. Or more accurately, when their TI hero starts cognitive looping with their, because their parent function is absent, cognitive looping with their NI child, it's like, well, I already know everything I want to know. And because of that, that's good enough for me. The thing is, though, is that the ISTP woman in that context needs to realize that that's not good enough for her ENTP lover. It's not good enough. Because STPs and ENTPs, they really, really have a hard time being considerate. Now, if the extroverted sensing parent is actually around doing its job and making sure that the introverted sensing inferior is getting a good experience and always being comfy and always had its needs handled and its diaper changed and its bottle being done and, laid down for sleep when it's nap time and all of those things that an SI inferior is going to need, that infantile part of C.S. Joseph's soul, SI inferior, the ISTP would be thoughtful and considerate. And some examples of what thoughtful and considerate looks like is that in relationships with women, whenever I complain, complain to them about things that I don't like that they do, it's usually because I accuse them that they're taking me for granted, or they're taking advantage of me, not giving back to me when I'm giving a lot to them, when they're not honoring and taking my effort for granted is more accurately. It's like they have this expectation that I'm always going to be putting in a lot of effort towards them, but there's no return on my on my investment. There's no appreciation for the amount of effort that I invest into these women in my life, etc., which causes the relationship to break down because they're ultimately being inconsiderate, right? It's like I'm not top of mind for them. It means that I'm not the most important thing to them in their life. And remember, an ENTP, when it comes to an ENTP man who's in a relationship with a woman, the things that he's going to have a problem with are four main things, which is not feeling wanted, not feeling listened to, not being the number one priority in this woman's life, and then she's being inconsiderate of him, and thus is basically taking his effort for granted. Which honestly, let's be fair, most women do that because society enables their innate female entitlement, also known as solipsism, which solipsism, again, is not a bad thing. It is a survival instinct that women have. It's not a bad thing. It helps continue the longevity of the race, but it's definitely something that men have to contend with. And because of that, women end up prioritizing themselves, putting themselves above their men, putting their children above their men, and their men end up being like third-class citizens, if not fourth-class citizens, especially if they have animals, etc., underneath their own roof. Whereas I have the expectation that, if I'm in a relationship with a woman, I'm number one, above the children, above her, above the animals, above everything. There's nothing more important to her in her life than me. Period. End of story. And if that's not how it is, I will not be in that relationship. I am number one. Period. End of story. And one of the ways that she is able to concretely prove this to me is by being considerate of my SI inferior. So a way that an ISTP woman can be considerate towards my SI inferior is making sure that she is thoughtful and keeping my introverted sensing, keeping my comfort, keeping my safety, providing relief to me, because I want to be able to come home and get relief. I want to be able to come home to a woman and knowing full well that I'm going to get relief after being out, slaying dragons and taking over the world and whatever ENTP things that I do, in my career. I mean, who knows what that is? I mean, obviously it's robbing, the nearest K jewelers, of their dignity, just by being there with my presence naturally. But the point is that thoughtfulness matters. But the only way that an ISTP woman is going to be thoughtful is if she actually uses her extroverted thinking nemesis to find input. Because if she's in a relationship with an extroverted thinker like she's supposed to be, well, that extroverted thinker would naturally provide her input in order for her to be thoughtful towards him. The difference is, though, is that I'm an ENTP. I'm not an extroverted thinker, and it's not my job to be providing her input. Therefore, she has to find that input on her own, which makes the intrigue relationship more difficult. It already is difficult, but it's additionally difficult just on top of that. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.